Thank you so much for having me. I am Gwendolyn Graff. I work for Wrigley, and my life, for the most part, exists in a lab where I mostly formulate gum formulas. And from doing that, I have learned a lot about how we actually taste, and so I'm here to talk to you today about how we taste. It's something we do every day, and believe it or not, it's pretty cutting-edge science. And it's not that I'm on the research end of the science, but it's really interesting to start looking at how we actually do that. And most of it happens in our brain. So first of all, this is the talk that we want to take out our kits. And this kit has several components, and I'm going to introduce them to you individually. So I'll give you some time to take them out. Feel free to eat them that you want, and if you don't feel comfortable eating them, feel free not to. I'll let you know what's in each of them. The first is this green vial, and it actually contains gum base. And so if you want to take that out and try gum base, you'll actually see that it's a pretty innocuous substance. It tastes like pretty much nothing. And so for that reason, when we actually develop a gum formula, we have to actually build back in that taste experience in order to give the consumer the perception that they're eating something. And so that's what I'm going to talk to you about. So I work in the sensory and design group at Wrigley, and my background's in science. So there's several components that actually build into that taste or flavor experience that you have when you eat food. And probably the largest component really is the taste of it. And so we're going to talk a little bit about taste. This is one of my favorite subjects. So there's actually 5 things that we can taste, and that's it. So we can taste sweet, sour, salt, bitter, and umami. And so I'm going to take you through each of those. And the reason we have the ability to taste these 5 things is a total survival instinct. So 3 of them are for living, and 2 of them are to not die. So So let's start out with sweet, and in the characteristic sweet note would be sugar. So you guys have a packet of sugar in your bag, so go ahead and take that out. Go ahead and try it. Sugar obviously tastes sweet. I'm sure you've all tasted sugar. One thing I'd just ask you to pay a little attention to, first of all, save some, because I'm going to have you use it a little bit later. And it'll also, sugar is warm when it melts on your tongue. It actually gives off energy into your mouth when it dissolves. And when you try a mint later, you're going to see that it's cold for a couple of reasons, and one that is a sugar-free, which is cold. But so the reason that we have sugar is a really good reason to live. And that's because sugar and carbohydrates give us energy. And from the moment that we're born, we crave sweet things. Mother's breast milk is sweet. Babies are hardwired for things that are sweet. We're hardwired to crave sweet things so that we can feed our body energy. So the next one we're going to talk about is sour. And sour characteristically is described as a lemon. And you guys have a packet of a citric acid or a lemon juice crystallized, true lemon. And although we've learned to like sour and to adapt sour into our diet, for the most part, our bodies they reject sour. So actually kids are really good at this, and I'm going to watch some of your faces as you're eating the crystals. Yeah, our body tells us everything we need to know about sour, especially as a kid. Back up and close, right? If we actually think about our taste as our bouncer for what can and can't get into our body, the face tells you everything. Close and back away. We don't want this in there. So it's totally a warning signal by our body that we shouldn't be having something that's sour. Now we've learned to like it along with the presence of sweet and other things, but sour in and of itself indicates that something is either not ripe or that it's spoiled. So milk goes sour, meat goes sour, and our body has instinctually knows that if something is sour, it potentially is dangerous for us to be letting it into our system. So the next one we're going to talk about is salty. Our third taste is salty. So you have a packet of salt, and I'm sure you've all tasted salt, but if not, take out your salt. And salty, it's funny because we regulate this in our diet a lot, and it actually has a really functional purpose. We have salt because it actually regulates our sodium-potassium pump to allow for differences in and out of our cells, which actually move fluid in and out of our cells. So our body is mostly composed of water, and this is actually the driver that moves all of our everything around our cells. So as much as we shouldn't have an over-saltified diet, but we need salt. Salt is really, really important to move all of our fluids around our body. The next one is bitter, and characteristically we have coffee, and you have a vial that's Folgers coffee grounds, so go ahead and taste that. And bitter is another one of these that the body says, don't do it. And although we all enjoy coffee in the morning, again, a kid's face will tell you exactly what to think about that or what the body thinks about that. Yuck. Yuck. We generally reject things that are bitter. It's a total warning statement by the body that says this is toxic, and including coffee. We drink it often in the morning to wake us up, but if we drink too much of it, it gives us the jitters. Things that are bitter tend to do things to you, and we hire people like doctors to actually give us an idea of what dose is the appropriate amount to actually do things to us in our body that won't actually injure us. But this is also why there's so much money in the pharmaceutical industry for coatings and gel coatings and things to get it actually past your taste buds. Because if you had to chew your medications, your body would expel them. You would not let them through. So we're actually getting ourselves to take them down by swallowing that pill and not to throw them up because we know that we need them in there. But your body doesn't want it in there. So the last one we're going to talk about is umami, and this is the taste that most people are a little less familiar with. This has been long known in the Japanese and Asian culture. It's only in the last 100 years that the Western culture has really embraced umami. And umami is actually the taste of protein. So some people say it's the taste of like bacon or mushroom broth. It's very like brothy and meaty. And you have a little yellow packet, and it's filled with accent, which is MSG. And MSG, I know, has bad press. MSG stands for monosodium glutamate. It's the salt of glutamine. Glutamine is one of your 23 amino acids. And we only have the ability to make a percentage of the amino acids to actually repair our muscles, which is what umami does for us. We have to ingest the rest of the amino acids. And so it's why it's so important that there's protein in our diet, that we're eating those amino acids, and we crave them because we need to repair our muscles in order to live. So it kind of tastes a little salty, but it kind of has this little guttural taste if you guys are trying the MSG. So when we actually look at these 5 basic tastes, we see 3 of them are for living, 2 of them are to not die. And I think it's kind of interesting when you're sick, what you typically crave, or at least what we typically crave, is chicken soup. And it's got the total recipe for repairing your body. It has carbohydrates in the noodles, it has salt in the broth, and it has chicken in order to repair your muscles. So our body tells us exactly what we need when we're actually sick. So taste actually happens on the tongue. And this is a picture of your tongue, and I'm sure you probably haven't spent much time looking at your tongue. If I was with a bunch of school kids, I'd have mirrors, and we'd all be looking at our tongue right now. So I encourage you to look at your tongue. So this is what it looks like. And if you see the little part up in the top, it actually has a topography. So your tongue is full of skin structures that are, hairy and raised, and most of them, a lot of the ones that we're going to talk about are called papilla. And it has different zones. And so the one I'm circling at the bottom is where if you actually dyed your tongue blue, you would see little red dots. And those little red dots, they won't dye blue. They're actually your fungiform papilla. And they actually have a couple taste buds that sit on the top of them. There's also taste buds that are located in your foliate papilla, and if you actually looked on the side of your tongue, you have what look like stripes, and they're skin folds that actually make those stripes, and that's also where you have taste buds located on your tongue, and they're located in the crevices of those stripes. You see those little white dots, and we'll talk a little bit more about them. And then finally, you have what are called your circumvallate papilla, and they actually look like a row of blisters on the back of your tongue, and if ever you thought maybe you had strep and you were looking back there and you're seeing these, they're supposed to be there. And these actually are like donuts with a hole filled, and they have a trough, and that's where the taste buds are located within that trough of these circumvallate. And the reason I'm talking about these these taste buds and where they're located on the tongue is there's a long-held understanding, and it's probably in most of our educational books right now in schools, that says we have these things called labeled lines, and that our tongue has zones that taste sweet at the tip and salty a little bit up on the sides, sour, and then bitter towards the back. And I'm here to tell you that's totally wrong. And this is why I say it's surprisingly we've been eating for however many hundreds, thousands of years, and we don't really understand the system. It's really, really, there's a lot of really cutting-edge research going on to understand what actually happens. But when we look at that, every one of those taste buds in every one of those papilla actually have the same cellular structure, and they look kind of like an onion that's embedded in the epithelial wall. And the onion is composed of about 50 to 100 cells, and the taste substance interacts with the taste through the taste pore, and some of those cells run the distance of the onion-looking taste bud, and they spark a sensory nerve fiber. And all of that then triggers the brain to know that you're tasting something. So you're not actually tasting on your tongue, you're tasting in your brain. And if we look at a microscopic slide and then a rendering, this is the microscopic slide. Let's look at the rendering, because the little blue circles kind of indicate where the taste buds are in some folds. And what I think is really interesting is if you had a particle of sugar and it was sitting on top of the tongue, so on top of those ridges, you actually wouldn't be in contact with the taste pore or the taste bud. So everything we taste, those 5 basic tastes, are all soluble. And that is why our body salivates, in order to produce enough liquid, in order to dissolve what we're going to be actually tasting. And so when you're anticipating eating, you start to salivate in order to provide the liquid that's going to dissolve the thing. So that what happens then is once it dissolves, it flows down into the trough and then fills up. And it's at that point that it actually is in contact and that you actually can taste. So if you have a dry mouth, you won't be able to taste. So taste is sweet, sour, salt, bitter, and umami. And I said that they interact with that nerve. And it's one of our cranial nerves called our glossopharyngeal nerve. And it's our 9th nerve. We have 12 different cranial nerves. I'm going to keep coming back to this slide because we're going to see that all of our tastes or flavor experiences come from different places in our brain. So my question for you now is, what does this taste like? Somebody shout something. So what I expect to usually hear is spearmint, and then I would tell you no. It tastes sweet, because we can only taste sweet, sour, salt, bitter, and umami. This doesn't taste like spearmint at all. And yet our verbiage very much says it tastes like spearmint, but it really smells like spearmint. We're going to now talk about the next really big influencer in our flavor experience, which is flavor. And flavor is an aroma. Flavor is not at all a contact sport. It doesn't matter if it touches our tongue, because what we need it to do is to be a gas, to volatilize, and to go and go up into our nose, into our olfactory bulb. So some areas of aroma would be mints, fruits, and herbals. In fact, I call flavor food perfume. Most of our flavor companies are also perfume companies. And what's really interesting, I think, about flavor is whereas our taste was about surviving and not letting certain things in our body, our aroma or olfaction sense is very much emotional. It's very much learned from our experiences. It's very much memory-inducing. I can smell a smell that reminds me of my grandmother's house, and automatically I'm taken back to that experience. And it's very much, you can see this in the fragrance industry when we call things perfumes like love and happy. This is an emotional place that flavor plays, and it's something we've learned, and different people can smell to the same thing and have very different experiences. So I have a couple things for us to do with aroma. The first is to take out your Skittles and open them up. This is going to be a little bit of a two-handed demo. So I'm going to need you, once you have them opened up, I need you to very much plug your nose. And then get your hand in there, because I need you to close your eyes and take out a Skittle and then put it in your mouth and chew it. And what I want you to notice, you really have to plug your nose, is that you should be just tasting maybe sweetness and maybe a little sourness. Now open your nose and you'll be able to tell what color you picked. But before you had this sense, you really wouldn't be able to tell. And for most of us, if we didn't have our sense of smell, you would not be able to tell the difference between a strawberry or a raspberry or a blueberry. It has so much in common until you actually add the aroma. So I often say that our tongue sucks, 5 things. Our nose is a rock star. Our nose can distinguish between 10,000 distinctly different scents. So it's a really good sensor. The other thing I have for you on aroma is a little blue vial, and inside of it, it has a wafting stick that's been saturated in some flavor. So if you open it up, you definitely will be able to smell that flavor. And then if you take some of your sugar and you eat it at the same time as you're smelling that flavor, you'll very much have the perception of what that combination would be normally perceived as. The other thing is, since you all have your own wafting stick, you're welcome to put it on your toe. That flavor doesn't taste like what it smells like. So that flavor is a juicy fruit flavor. So when you add it with the sugar, you should kind of be feeling like you're chewing juicy fruit. But if you actually taste that wafting stick, it's probably bitter. It's mostly the carrier that we actually dilute the flavor chemicals in. So flavor does not taste like what flavor smells like. You really need that taste component in order to put it all together. So when we actually smell, that's coming in through a whole other place in our brain. That's coming in through our olfactory nerve. So a totally different place that's tapping into your brain to put this puzzle together. So this is the third, and although it's a relatively less big component on how we experience things, to me it's one of our most important at Wrigley, because we often make mint gums. And so we deal a lot in what is called our trigeminal. So we have another nerve system called our trigeminal system, and we're tapping into every time we eat, but we don't think about it. It doesn't get its due. So the trigeminal system is not a taste system, a smell system. It is a feeling system. And this is where we feel things like tingle, warming, and cooling. And so this system is actually hijacking your pain receptors. So we all know that when we take hot sauce out of the refrigerator, it's not hot, it's cold actually, but it's hot when we try it, and that's because it's hijacking those receptors that tell us that we're burning. And so it's very much a nerve fiber it's our trigeminal nerve fiber. So I have a few of these for you to try to kind of differentiate what this feels like when you're having food. So you have a gingin in your packet. This is a ginger caramel. It's 30% ginger, and ginger has a natural tingling effect. So if you don't like heat, it's going to feel a little hot because it's sometimes hard to differentiate between heat and tingle. But we often refer to tingling trigeminal sensation as maybe like a battery on your tongue, so it gives you a little bit of a buzzing. So that's gingin. So the next one is one you're more familiar with, which is a crushed red pepper, and this is to represent warming or heat. And when you have crushed red pepper on pizza or anything else, the oil in peppers comes from a chemical called capsaicin, and we're able to really concentrate that and make really hot things, and that's what makes all those hot sauces. But you'll notice this is heat, and again, that's just pain. It's like it's hijacking your burning nodes. And then this is actually John's favorite, cooling. And so since we work in so many mints, mints come from the menthone family, which is menthol, you might be familiar with, is a cooling substance. We've been able to isolate a lot of those cooling chemicals. And one of our cooling agents, I put it in here with the sorbitol in this tablet, so what John is calling your pill. So this tablet has just a small amount of cooling agent, but if you suck on this tablet, suck on it for as long or as little as you'd like, you'll feel cooling along the back of your throat. You'll also feel some physical cooling because it's made with a polyol, a sorbitol, which is a sugar-free sugar, and sugar-free sugars actually steal heat from your body when they melt, so they actually are cold, and then it has the chemical as well that will give you the cooling effect that's working on your trigeminal system. And we very much have cooling agents that can target different parts of your mouth, and this one very much you should be feeling right along the back of your throat. So our trigeminal nerve is a totally another nerve that taps into our brain, our fifth nerve. And so finally, to put this puzzle together, you also have your eyes that are telling you the color. And we very much, I've given consumers samples of gum that is white, and I'll get comments back and say, that was a great grape, or that was a great watermelon, or that was a great strawberry. They all got the same gum. It's very hard for individuals to tell what they're tasting if they don't have a cue. And so color plays a lot into our perception or anticipation of understanding what we're going to taste, as well as texture. We get a little bit of a pass on gum because it has a pretty smooth, normal texture. But if you had an apple that's crisp versus an apple that's mealy, that very much could be a rejector of whether you'd like or not like that fruit. So those come in through your optic nerve for the color and your intermediate motor nerve for your texture. So when we actually look at this map, 5 of your 12 different cranial nerves are being excited when you're actually eating food, all coming into your brain for your brain to put together this map of telling you what it is that you're actually experiencing. So if we looked at something like a spearmint gum, we would be tasting sweet, we would be smelling mint, we would be feeling cool, we'd be seeing green, and then we'd be having just probably a regular gum texture. But all of that is going to come together to tell us that we're having spearmint, something we take advantage of every day that we eat. So, thank you.